Question. Hi Kim, I've been on a spiritual path for a very long time and have been studying Ascended Master teachings released through you for 11 years. Nevertheless, I have just realized that the primary reason why I haven't made significant progress on my path is that there are certain aspects of my psychology that I've been unwilling to look at or question in sufficient depth. Now I'm changing my ways, and I picked the 24th of July as the first day of a new phase of my life in which I will demonstrate a level of willingness to look at any of my separate selves that neither my higher self nor my masters have ever seen from me in any of my previous embodiments. And so I want to comment on this first because, first of all, it's part of the spiritual path that we go through these kind of shifts. And if we are successful in walking the path, we will actually come to these where we see that, oh gosh, the primary reason I haven't made significant progress is that there are certain aspects of my psychology that I have been unwilling to look at or question in sufficient depth. But that's a great result on the spiritual path. Okay? I've seen many people who have been on the spiritual path for decades. They have been doing all the outer things right, but never come to this realization because they are still not willing to look at things. They are not even necessarily realizing that the essence of the path is to look at your psychology. So what I'm saying is, if you have these kind of experiences, this is not a sign that you haven't done well enough on the path. This is a sign that you are doing well on the path and you have made significant progress. Because only if you are really walking the path, the inner path, can you come to this realization. Otherwise you would just push it into the subconscious, explain it away, deny it, and continue focusing on what you think is going to get you to the end automatically. So this is not a failure. This is just natural. And the reason why I say it's natural is because I look back at myself. And I always had a certain willingness to look at myself. But I can also see that it evolved over time, because when you go back when I was 18 years old and found a spiritual path, there were certain things in my psychology that I was in no way, shape or form ready to look at. And if you had had some kind of guru who had pointed this out to me, I either wouldn't have been able to look at it, or I would have felt completely devastated by having these characteristics in my psychology, basically these subconscious selves. So it's natural as we walk the path that we gradually get more and more willing to look at our psychology, to look deeper into the psychology. That's the ideal outcome. And quite frankly, I've talked about this before, that there are 144 levels of consciousness, right? And so we consciously really start the path at the 48th level. We go up to the 96th level where there's an important turning point. We go to the higher levels of Christhood. So what I'm saying is that at the 48th level, you're not meant to see the subconscious selves that are blocking you at the 96th level, because you can't. You need to see, at the 48th level, you need to see the self that's blocking you there, so you go to the 49th, then you see the next self, go to the 50th level, and so forth. So what I'm saying is, you cannot blame yourself that you haven't been able to see something before. And I know the person is saying, I haven't been willing. Yeah, but were you ready, is what I'm saying. Because you can't, this is an ambition that could come in, that you hear about their subconscious selves we need to overcome, you want to overcome them all in 5 minutes, so you can be the best student. And, you know, it's just not the way it works. And that's why I'm actually a little bit concerned with the person saying, I picked the 24th of July as the first day for a new phase in my life in which I will demonstrate a level of willingness to look at any of my separate selves that neither my higher self nor my masters have ever seen from me in any of my previous embodiments. This sounds like an ambition that comes from a subconscious self. You don't need to be willing to look at any of my separate selves. You just need to be willing to look at the one you are dealing with at your present level of consciousness, so you can go to the next level up. But I understand that, as I said, there were things that I was not able or ready to look at when I was 18 years old. But I also understand that there when I look at myself, there have been times where there was a certain aspect of my psychology that I was ready to look at because I had some awareness of it, but I wasn't willing to look at it. And it was often because I was too afraid that if I saw something really bad in my psychology, I would condemn myself. And it was only really when I looked at the self that wants to condemn me for having unresolved psychology and overcame that self that I became free to look at anything. But I'm still saying, you know, don't be too dramatic about this. I mean, it almost a little bit sounds like the person has this epic drama consciousness that comes from ego. I have some ego discourses where I talk about the ego dramas. And the ego can turn the spiritual path into a drama, where now I haven't been willing, I see that I haven't been willing to look at certain aspects of my psychology. That's genuine enough, you can have that vision. But then the ego turns it into a drama. Now I'm really going to demonstrate that. Now I'm willing to look at anything. As I said, it's really not necessary. You know, just be willing to look at the next thing you need to overcome, and then be willing to look at the next. And then don't have the ambition that you can now, because you're willing, you can very easily come to expect that, oh, now you're going to get these dramatic results. And what I see with people who go through this, myself included, is that usually the results aren't forthcoming. And there can be a long period where it feels like you're not getting anywhere, you're not making any progress, but you are. It's just that you're not consciously aware of it. So you have to be very careful there. Anyway, so the person says, although I have read almost all of your books, I feel the need to go back to the basics and read many of them again, as my unwillingness to look at some of my separate selves prevented me from recognizing and integrating many invaluable insights. And then he mentions the person mentions certain books, and then says, what else would you recommend and in which order? And basically, I would recommend that you take the Avatar Revelation series of books. It starts with the novel My Lives with Lucifer, Satan, Hitler, and Jesus, and the next book is Healing Your Spiritual Traumas. Because it has, especially Healing Your Spiritual Traumas, has some practical tools for helping you see these subconscious selves. And then when the person is talking about, I see that I haven't integrated many of the lessons, I would say, go to the, there's a series of books called The Path to Self-Mastery. And they are, for each of the 7 spiritual rays, there's a book by the Chohan, the main master for that ray. And it starts with the mystical initiations of power. And then it goes through the 7 rays. So the second ray is the mystical initiations of wisdom, the mystical initiations of love, and so forth. And they are meant to take you from the 48th to the 96th level of consciousness. And so it's important to use those books to go back, go through them, and see if there's something there that you missed, even though the person has read them before. Is there something you missed? Is there some important self that you didn't look at the level, and that you're still dragging with you, because that can really block you. So that would be my recommendation, to start with these books. And the reason why I'm recommending those is that they are very directly dealing with psychology and with the subconscious selves and how to see them and overcome them. So anyway, that's my primary recommendation. The person mentions other books, and they can also be valuable, but I would definitely start with these.